right. Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for welcome to our campus resources video episode 6. Today, we're very happy to have Dr. Casey White to talk us about the student conduct and the community standards, which we also short as SCCS, here to help us learn more about this department. Hi, Dr. Casey White.
Hello, thank you, Young.
Yeah. Do you mind to briefly introduce yourself and your department to us?
Certainly. My name is Casey White, and I am actually a Florida State alum. I received my doctoral degree here in higher education a few years ago, and credit Florida State with giving me a tremendous foundation for my career and truly my passion for serving students. And I've had the opportunity to work at small private schools, large public schools throughout the Southeast. And I was able to come back to Florida State to help in a departmental transition with student conduct and community standards, what used to be called student rights and responsibilities. And so I'm honored to serve as a part of the Division of Student Affairs and absolutely believe in the value of us having aspirational values and ideals that we want all Florida State University students to aspire to and to uphold. So that's a part of the job that I have. So I know the student conduct side can sound kind of scary, but the community standards side is something that perhaps all of us can resonate with.
Yeah, I do like how do you separate these two? As student conduct and community standards, sometimes like for me, I'm a second language, right? English is my second language. So when I see the student conductors sound serious, but when you break it down as community standards, I do appreciate that. Oh, yes, that's what I resonate in, and I am part of this community.
Absolutely, yes. Me too. And if I could flip it, it might be kind of fun, but I don't know if that would, you sometimes we name departments things that as administrators we think make sense, but what makes more sense to the students so you can understand what is it that that office does.
Yeah.
So it might be kind of fun to start with community standards and student conduct, but that might take another year or two. We'll have to see. We'll see what gets some traction.
All right. So since we're talking about why we are naming is like this and how are we serve our students, can you talk more about like what kind of supports that were made in like report fsu.edu, since this is really a big thing right now, especially for international student community to know and use more as part of very important campus resource.
Absolutely. I think it's a great question. In coming back, this this device in terms of report.fsu.edu and this website and this resource was not something that existed, probably even 10 years ago. And when you try to build a campus culture when we're as large as we are, when people maybe aren't sure of where to turn, I think that this website and even understanding that if you are experiencing, behaviors of concern, or you want to express and let somebody at the university know, I'm concerned about this student, or I think that I've experienced something related to discrimination or bias, or I've seen something on campus or in the community, and I know we'll talk about that, that just doesn't seem right, but I don't know where to go or
Yeah.
who to connect with, that this website at least gives students and faculty and staff, and we receive community member reports too, somewhere to submit it. And then you're like, okay, I've done my part. How can others now respond and help me to navigate whatever situation I wanted? It's a little bit like in the airports, when we used to be able to travel more, when the whole campaign of when you see something, say something, and giving each other a voice so that you don't feel like you have to just dismiss something. So this report.fsu.edu is a great resource, but I also think there's a little bit of a mystery to it. So I imagine we'll probably talk a little bit more about that. But from a campus climate and a culture perspective, there is a very large culture of reporting I have found at Florida State. And it may be a little bit nationally and even internationally as people kind of live their lives more publicly, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse. So we know a lot more than we probably used to, which hopefully, again, we use that for good, to help all of us to be more successful.
Yes, I think one thing really stood out to me on your conversation is about actually this is an important resource for us to contribute to create a campus climate and the culture climate here. So that's it actually a very important thing for us to really be part of this culture and the campus climate so that we know what is the diversity is and what are the different kind of fact and phenomenon under this context. So, but I do have this kind of like mystery, right? It is
Yeah.
mysterious for me, especially like let's say I am not so familiar with the US college system. So if this is kind of thing that we don't have in our own country education system, when I first came here, I will probably be confused who should I firstly like contact with when I have this kind of discrimination experience right here. So do you think the report.fsu.edu, no matter I have this kind of experience or my friend's experience on or off campus, this should be the first resource I should reach out?
Well, and it's a great question, Young, because I think also i- internationally there also can be a perception and sometimes a reality of, am I reporting something, say maybe to law enforcement,
Yeah.
and in your home country that may not be the same type of relationship that we have, especially with our FSU police department. And so when you see report, it's one of those, oh, yeah, am I making a police report? And
Mhm.
so I think we can probably do a better job clarifying. Now, if this is an emergency and 24/7, we want people to call the police. And campus police people tend to be very different. They do more like community policing. And that's not to discredit Tallahassee Police Department or the Leon County, but I think it's important for, those of us that have been born in the States to understand people from other countries may have an inherent distrust of police, and rightly so in many places. So I think trying to understand, oh, this actually goes to people who are not police officers. It goes to people who are committed to, student affairs. Our police are, but um, the whole goal is dependent upon the nature of the report, it gets routed or sent to different colleagues throughout primarily the Division of Student Affairs and also Human Resources. The hard part, Young, is your point about what students may experience beyond like the physical campus.
Mm.
We have less leverage. And I'll give a specific. I know especially late spring, early summer, there, was a lot of abhorrent um, words that were targeted at students, especially from China.
Mhm.
And it may have happened in public supermarket, it may have happened in a Walmart. And so while students submit that concern, we have like almost next to no leverage to do something about that. And
Mm.
it's hard because our students are experiencing something that isn't appropriate, that does absolutely make you think twice about, why am I here? Are people not appreciative of me being in the States and studying at Florida State? And so I think, so while it's hard because we don't have a lot of leverage, now if it's a law enforcement thing,
Mhm.
that's different. The hard part is when it's speech
Mm.
as compared to conduct,
Mm.
wow, our First Amendment can be very positive in
Mhm.
terms of the freedom to speak, but those words can be really hurtful.
It is.
So, where I think as a university, and there's a lot of us working on this, how do we respond as a team to try to send more than an email to at least help students to know what their resources are. And the center is amazing, obviously, for our international students, but the whole university needs to be well versed and supportive. So it's not just a matter of, oh, okay, if you're an international student, you go to the center. We all bear that responsibility. So I know that's a long answer in terms of the community piece as compared to Florida State proper, because what student conduct and community standards gets to oversee is the student conduct code.
Yeah.
So if there's something that happens in the community, we have no like authority over those people.
I see.
But we do have a lot of resources to help our students navigate those really hard and again horrific experiences that are completely unfair, no question.
Yeah, I appreciate that you mentioned about this experiences on early this year that international students, especially Asian students, my experience. Those are very important part of us, and also I personally appreciate that you mentioned and really like notice what we're experiencing right now is very important. But I do wanted to um, follow up on this question is, so based on my understanding is we do have very hard like time to really leverage on and off campus in that sense. But no matter how, I can still reach out to report.fsu.edu and have following up resources provided for me that help me to navigate this whole process exactly, right?
Absolutely. Yep. You absolutely summarized it, Young. And I think one of the benefits to reporting is it gives colleagues like, Laura and I insight to what are our students experiencing on and off campus, and how can we, A, be more knowledgeable, B, more supportive in terms of what's that network of
Mm,
support and resources. And the communication is strong, but if we don't know about it,
mhm.
then we can't try to do better.
I see.
So even, yeah, even if there's little to nothing that we could do about a report, we can, like in terms of like almost getting somebody in trouble or holding them accountable,
Mhm.
we can and we do have a much greater awareness of what are our students experiencing? How
Exactly.
can we be better supports to them and have a greater awareness? And I think, again, in the summer, when uh, very challenging issues are going on in your home countries. I can think about, I believe, the center helped to lead time with our Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Hecht, with our Iranian students. But,
Mhm.
I mean, there's just the landscape right now is pretty tense. And our students do reflect what's going on in society. You're not in a bubble. And,
Yeah.
and one of the things I applaud and admire, I think oftentimes, and this is a generalization, oftentimes our international students have a better pulse on what's going on in the US
Mhm.
than students from the States because they take it for granted. It's
Yeah.
all they've known and they're not paying enough attention. They're not engaged. But I just believe, and again, I know it's a huge generalization and it's probably a stereotype, but at least I think it's a positive one, is that our international students bring such wisdom, insight, awareness to your lived experiences in your home country, but also here. Like
Yeah.
you more fully embrace what's going on in the States. than a lot of our, native students. They do. They take it for granted.
I,
So this is a very timely conversation, especially since we're in election week.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
wow, we got a lot going on, a pandemic and national election, and you're still trying to navigate being a student. And
Yeah,
that's the thing we want to help with. How can you be academically successful when there's so much going on in the world around you? And if it's not a positive experience, at least using report.fsu.edu helps us to become more aware.
yeah. I do think that one of the thing that we do wanted to get for international students through these video resources is to also let them know that we do have a unified system and we recognize their value, and we know that they have very important contribution to our campuses and vice versa. So I do appreciate you mentioning our value and recognize that we are part of this community. I think that is a very important aspect that we want to do this video with all of those directors under the student affairs, and knowing that actually we are doing something for international students, and we know international students is an important part of our whole campus.
Absolutely. And we have to pay attention to what's going on coming out of Washington, D.C. I
Mhm.
mean, we know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it was a lot harder for international students to even get here to
Mhm.
start this summer and fall. And then, some of these potential executive orders about the limited amount of time that you may be able to be here. And so that there's a lot on the line. And so we and the staff have to be really cognizant and aware, how is that impacting each and every student that we serve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But when we are talking about report.fsu.edu, I wanted to talk more about like in their life, like how do they exactly use it. So let's see, if I file a report at report.fsu.edu, what is gonna happen next?
Right.
How do I know I successfully complete the report? What is the next step coming up?
Sure. And so, depending upon the nature of what gets reported,
Mhm.
for instance, it's very important, reporting incidents of sexual misconduct or stalking.
Mm,
And that's a heavy topic. That's a heavy one. So why don't we'll go to um, reporting, well, acts of discrimination or bias. That may be the one that we experience the most. So that once the information is put in, and there's enough questions on there so that the recipients can get an idea of how might we best respond to this. April, May of 2020, we got a lot of information related to discriminatory and bias incidents, that things that had been posted on social media. And
mm,
it ran just the gamut. Whether it was after the killing of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement, whether it was related to, well, as you mentioned earlier, Asian students and how people may have been treating Asian students specifically about the, coronavirus. And so we got a lot of reports there. That particular report, right now, I am the primary recipient to try to discern if there is a potential violation of the code of conduct,
yeah.
and or if it's like a speech issue.
Mm,
And so we started to reply to the person who submitted the report, A, to thank them for the report, and B, within that response, list what resources might be helpful for them,
mm,
as well as the opportunity, if you want to talk about this further, to contact us at sccs@fsu.edu.
mm.
Now, for the person, if they're a student, say who posted a very argumentative, a post that felt discriminatory towards you or anti, that it really does run the gamut from a race perspective, a religion or faith perspective. People have also expressed concerns about, I feel targeted as an LGBT, like gay, lesbian, transgender student. So for the person who may have posted, whether it's on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, when we get, say, the actual pictures of that, since it's a speech issue,
Mm.
it can't go through like the code of conduct. But from a community and Florida state values perspective, we're going to have a conversation with you. So
Mm.
we can't require that student, but we can make it sound like it's not an option to disregard it. And so we do what are called, we've just tagged it as an educational conversation.
Mm.
And we've been doing it all through Zoom because it's all gone on since March. And there's about 6 or 8 colleagues, especially within the Division of Student Affairs, who have said they're comfortable having that conversation. Because again, the student conduct side, they're not in trouble because what they didn't raise to a level of a potential conduct violation,
Mm.
but that community standard side is where we've got a concern.
Mm.
So people that have posted things on TikTok that community members or Florida State students have reported, I've had a lot of those conversations.
Mm.
And just to say, it's not a conduct matter, but let's have a real conversation. Like, tell me about what's going on here. What prompted you to write and post what you did? Talk me through what your experience has been.
Mm.
And sometimes I think students just tell us what they think we want to hear
Mm.
so that they can kind of be done with the conversation. And other times, I do think there's a glimmer of hope that they may see, yeah, that really wasn't appropriate, or that wasn't called for, or yes, I could see how that would hurt someone.
Mm.
So we're going to keep having those conversations. We're not here to brainwash people,
Yeah.
but it is a privilege to be a student at Florida State University. And it's important for our students to understand you represent yourself, which is very critical, but you also represent Florida State, and we need you to do better.
Yeah. I
So
do.
we try to make it conversational, but I know it can feel a little preachy. But I don't have to, I'm not going to apologize for that because it's our values.
Yeah. I do think that with all of everything happening around the world, with so many like issues happening to our lives, anything that happened to us that are not neglected by the
Mhm.
campus, that is the key. It might take time, it might take a long process for us to really like elevate this campus climate, but at least we're not ignoring those problems and trying to solve them and have talked to them. I think that is the most important part to me.
It takes time, and it's really important.
Mm.
So for those things that are really important, you make the time,
Yes.
because you just, like, if we can chip away each person. And I think the other part, Yang, is a lot of our students are 18 to 24 years old.
Mm.
They're figuring out, what do they believe, what do they know. And we also have to prepare people beyond Florida State. When you graduate and you experience something, whether it's a conflict, a disagreement, how do we do that with civility? Because it's pretty likely, whether it's in the workplace or just in the community, there's not going to be a report.fsu.edu. So how do we give each other the skills to have really hard conversations? And even this week, a colleague and I, um, just anticipating that there's going to be some controversy. There's going to be people who don't agree. It could be their roommate, it could be their apartment mate. And so, how do you still live your life even though you may not agree with that person? So, that conflict resolution, these are skills that are things that we can teach and do better with outside the classroom,
Mhm.
because it's pretty unlikely that a lot of this gets talked about inside the classroom.
Yeah. And also, I think another perspective for international students specifically is to claim your right in this country,
Mhm. Yes.
claim your thoughts, and to make them feel that their thoughts, perspectives are valued and not ignored.
And your voice is critical.
Yeah.
We and selfishly, we will be better because of that. And if you are afraid to share your voice, that's what we have to tackle.
Yeah.
That's that climate part.
Yeah.
If you're, afraid, whether it's someone may not agree with you, or at the very extreme, if something gets physically violent, that's, that what how do you navigate those situations? And we don't want it to get to that point. But people aren't always as rational or as thoughtful. We need to help everyone to understand that all voices matter,
Yeah.
and that we're going to be better as a result of hearing and learning from each other and your experiences. Again, selfishly, we are so fortunate that so many international students are attracted to Florida State.
Thank you.
We're a better place because of that.
Mm.
So how do we help all of us to open our eyes and our ears and our hearts, quite honestly, to
Yeah.
learn more? And that's kind of what keeps me going every day. We can be better. We can be better than what we're seeing playing out on news stations. We can be better than even what people are experiencing in Tallahassee. We have to be. We're called to do that. And if we can learn through report.fsu.edu when those experiences are not going well, that's our call to action.
Mhm. So, since you mentioned that probably sometimes you're afraid of really file a report, I do want to follow up on this. Probably one thing is just because of different educational system, we don't know too much about this report at fsu.edu. But another side I do want to clarify is as a students who file the report, their identity is protected. Let's say if we are reporting on a discrimination on our, let's say, close faculty members or employees, am I gonna be like in in a different situation or something?
That's a great question. And there, you do have the ability to submit anonymously.
Okay.
So now it at least gives us awareness.
Hmm.
It then is harder for us to obviously follow up with the reporting person from that support and resource perspective.
Hmm.
If there is a genuine concern, well, genuine, just if there's a concern about retaliation,
Yeah.
or especially in the classroom, sometimes students are afraid that if they've experienced something that they believe is inappropriate and the faculty member finds out that they reported it, are they going to get a bad grade?
Yes.
And so we work, and that's where the human resources side, which is the large department that helps to oversee all of our staff and faculty behavior, the same way we have a student conduct code, there are absolutely rules and policies and expectations for staff and faculty. So some of those reports, if it involves a faculty member, our colleagues in human resources are routed on those. And we do a little bit of what we call like air traffic controlling. Okay, HR, human resources, you take the lead with this. And they would reach out to the reporting party to
Mm,
gather as much information as possible. And so that's where use your voice to say, I'm concerned about such and such, that I might get a bad grade for reporting this. You can put that in the report
mm,
because that's extra information that then allows the recipient to know what are the dynamics that we're dealing with. But you would, as a reporting party, the human resources staff investigates those. Um, and so I know that that can be really, really scary finding your voice again, because if you're experiencing that kind of behavior in the classroom,
mm,
odds are good other people have experienced it.
mm.
And if we just think, oh, somebody else is going to report it, it's like, how do they not know? Well, if we don't know what people don't tell us.
Yeah, I think in general, it's a very sparkling conversation. I did enjoy it, but I do feel like report.fsu.edu is really a place for us to let our voice hear by everyone. And it's an excellent like resource for us to contribute to our perspectives and really contribute to FSU. So I think that is really important for international students community specifically when we were feeling being an outsider, not having a blindness on campus. However, we do have a place that we can visit in. So thank you so much, Dr. Kissy White.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to, the hard part is when you get these reports, it means things aren't going well,
Yeah.
but we can turn that into how do we then again support. So with colleagues like Laura and Robin, I mean, the passion to serve students and specifically serve international students is what keeps us going. So even if we get brought together for a hard reason, somehow we're going to make something positive come from that. That's what we have to hold on to every day. So I appreciate the opportunity. And if people have any questions or concerns, feel free, reach out to our department. And if you want to call us community standards and student conduct, I'm okay with that too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.